I want to begin the Shiur, B'siyata D'Shmaya, the first day of Yeshivas Bein Hazmanim, to thank the powers, the koiches behind Yeshivas Bein Hazmanim, Rabbi Hammelberg, as well as Rabbi Yosef Fried, that are two koiches, not only for Yeshivas Bein Hazmanim, but for all the learning programs. Last night there was a gewaldige Kiddush Hashem learning over here, Motzi Yom Kippur. I come even if I don't have koiches. How could you not come be part of such a beautiful matzav? The morning koil, the night koil, Hagdol Torah Ladir, the Eibush should give them continuous siyata d'shmaya. In today's Shiur, I would like to focus on a topic that's less discussed in a typical Shiur before a Yom Tif, before Sukkos. Usually you'll go to a Shiur, Be'ez Hashem, there'll be more Shiurim over here. The typical is either, what are the mitzvahs coming up? What are the mitzvahs coming up? The mitzvahs are say D'Oraisa, the mitzvahs Dalat Minim. So you could speak about each one of the min, the kashrus amin, you could speak about the mitzvahs Netila, and then avada is the mitzvahs Yeshivas Sukkah, the kashrus of a sukkah, the mitzvahs Yeshivas Sukkah, the first night, Chakira. There's a lot to speak about. There's another mitzvah, a mitzvah min ha-Torah, that's going to be coming up Sukkos, which unfortunately we do not have it because we don't have the Beis HaMikdash. A mitzvah that's connected dafka to Sukkos, the mitzvah min ha-Torah of Nissuch Hamayim. Nissuch Hamayim. We're a little bit connected to the Nissuch Hamayim because we have Simchas Beis HaShe'eva B'zman Hazeh, and the Simchas Beis HaShe'eva B'zman Hazeh is a zeicher to the Simchas Beis HaShe'eva that was in the Beis HaMikdash, and the Pashtus, the Simchas Beis HaShe'eva in the Beis HaMikdash was for the mitzvah of Nissuch Hamayim. Shitas HaRambam is differently, but that's not the discussion for today. Al Kaponim, we're a little bit connected. So when you go to the Simchas Beis HaShe'eva Sukkos, if we're not zeicher to be in the Beis HaMikdash, it's zeicher to the Nissuch Hamayim, to the mitzvah mid'oraisa of Nissuch Hamayim, and we're going to try to speak about it, to go in a little bit into this mitzvah. What's this mitzvah of Nissuch Hamayim? Where exactly is this mitzvah? Where in the Torah? So it's not one of the Taryag mitzvahs. It's not one of the Taryag mitzvahs. As a matter of fact, the chinuch from the Rishonim that lists the Taryag mitzvahs doesn't bring it. It's not one of the Taryag mitzvahs, but the minchas chinuch in Hilchas Sukkos, the Hainu mitzvah shin chaf, mitzvahs karba musaf b'chol yom of Sukkos. Zok the minchas chinuch. I'm going to speak over here about the mitzvah of Nissuch Hamayim, because where else should I speak about it? So it's a mitzvah min ha-Torah that's not in the Taryag mitzvahs. It's in the Maramakoimis over here. B'chag ha-Sukkos hayoid mitzvah bebeis hamikdash. There was another mitzvah besides. There was Sukkah, there was Lulav, and he's going on what the Chinuch is talking about. Mitzvahs karban musaf of Sukkos. Says the Minchas Chinuch, there was another mitzvah bebeis hamikdash u'makoymoi kan. Makoymoi kan. So if it's not a mitzvah from the Taryag mitzvahs, where then yes is the mitzvah? Where do we find the mitzvah? So the emes is that it's a Gemara in Sukkah, the Gemara Mem Dalet Amar Aleph. The Gemara says, "V'Nissuch Hamayim halacha l'Moshe Mesinai." The din Nissuch Hamayim, just to be clear, these Nissuch Hayayin came with all karbonis. That's in Parsha Shlach. Wine, menachos and wine came with every carbon. Most carbon came with the karbonis. That's a Parsha Shlach, and that was every day of the year. What we're talking about is unique, separately. That there was the water, the Nissuch Hamayim pouring water. That was dafka on Sukkos, and that's halacha l'Moshe Mesinai. The Gemara in Tainis of Beis Amud Beis Zok the Gemara. The Tanya of Yehuda ben Peseira Omer, Ne'emar. The Gemara says, how do you know Nissuch Hamayim, a remes to Nissuch Hamayim in the Torah? So if you take a look in the Psukim, I have a copy of it also in Parashas Pinchas, that's the Kriya throughout Chalamoid. The regular of every single day, a couple of pages in, where you have over there Psukim, Tezayin, Yud Zayin, Usi'ir izem echad lechatos, milvad, oilas ha-tamid, the regular carbon tamid that we brought, minchasa. Every tamid came with a mincha, v'niska, and it's nisachim, dahainu, Nissuch Hayayin. Nissuch Hayayin. So, and Nissuch Hayayin, because that was brought every single day of the year. If you continue on, there are 3 changes throughout all the Karbanas HaChag. In the second day, B'yoyim HaSheni, Pasuk Yutes at the end of the Pasuk says, Umin Chasa V'niskehem. Instead of V'niska, it says V'niskehem. These are extra endemem. It's also Lashon Rabbim, we'll soon see, but it's V'niskehem, not V'niska. Then if you continue on weiter, it's on the next page, but the Gemara brings it. Nemar b'sheni v'niskehem. These are extra endemem. Zok the Gemara. V'nemar b'shishi, the 6th day of Yom Tov, imsacheha. These are extra yud. Doesn't just say v'niska, imsacheha with a yud. V'nemar b'shvi, on the 7th day, kimishpatam. Usually it says kimishpat. V'lakvasim and misparim kamishpat. It says kamishpatam with an endemem extra mem. So the Gemara says, what are the 3 extra letters? Mem, Yud, Mem is Mayim. So the Gemara, Hareikan Mayim, Mikan Remes, Nissuch Hamayim, Min HaTorah. That says the mitzvahs Nissuch Hamayim is a din min HaTorah, and it's merumis with these letters. The Meshech Chochmah asks the following question. Rabbi Simcha, the Arsamech ala Torah, he asks, the Pasuk says, V'niskehem Lashon Rabbim. What's Lashon Rabbim? Every morning when we brought the carbon tamid, there was only one Nesachim that we brought, the Nissuch Hayayin. Why does the Torah say V'niskehem Lashon Rabbim? Enechanami, there's a drasha, like what the Gemara says, but Frekter Meir Simcha, you have the copy of the Meshech Chochmah. I don't understand. It's not V'niskehem, it's V'niska. Every carbon tamid only came with one Nesachim, the Nissuch Hayayin. So Be'emerson, the simple answer, which he answers that, but he answers it with a gavaldige yesod, which we'll get to in a second. But the simple answer is, we just saw the Gemara. The Gemara says, "Merumis Nissuch Hamayim in HaTorah." So it's moridik. V'niskehem. These 2 Nissuchs, Nissuch Hayayin of every single day of the year, and Nissuch Hamayim now on Sukkos. So it's very good. It's very good. The etzem, you could stop right here. I was learning last night with my son. Tzvi by the Motzi Yom Kippur, we're going over a little bit to prepare the Shiur, and Be'etzim, he said, it's very geschmack, it's very good, it's moiridik. The Torah says V'niskehem, and it's taka 2 Nesachims, Nissuch Hamayim and Nissuch Hayayin. Be'etzim, you could stop right here. However, seemingly l'chayru, what was bothered is that l'maisa, it's not. If it would be this, we'll soon see how he makes it 2 different dinim. But if it would be the same thing, Nissuch Hamayim and Nissuch Hayayin, it still should have said B'lashon Yachid v'Niska. It's Nesachim. It happens to be in the recipe of the Nesachim. These water, these wine. If you would need 4 different things in the Nesachim, you would need oil and honey. You can't bring honey out of the Mizbeach. If you would need all these type of things, so is it different Nesachims? It's one thing. It's one Nesachim with water and wine. Zokter Meir Simcha, it's moiridik. It's cholak. It's different. The Nissuch Hayayin that's brought every single day al gabi mizbeach to the Nissuch Hamayim that was brought on Sukkos al gabi mizbeach. And as we'll see, these 3 nafkaminas ladina, but it's cholak. It's cholak. What's the difference? Nissuch Hayayin, the other one is following me while it's clear. Nissuch Hayayin that's brought every single day is a din in the carbon. What carbon? The carbon tamid. The carbon tamid was supposed to come with wine, with Nissuch Hayayin. It's a chiluk of the carbon. Masha Enkein, the Nissuch Hamayim. The Nissuch Hamayim has nothing to do with the tamid. Nothing to do with the tamid. It had to do with the yoim. There was a din, the days of Chalamoid, there was Nissuch Hamayim. Not to do with the carbon.
You see, we're learning it out. But you see that the Gemara, we're learning it out from the same din as the regular din of Sukkos. So maybe you could say that we're making it a chiluk of the Karbanos Hayayin. But how do you see that it's in God's two separate din?
Very good, beautiful. What's your name?
Avrami.
Beautiful what you're asking, Be'emerson. And Behemshech of the Shiur will soon see that it's not so simple. What my the pshita later Ramei Simcha will soon see is questionable. So let's see as we move along if the question is still a question. But to clear, there's a chiluk between the two nesachims. When the Torah Kedosha says v'niskehem loshen rabim, there's one nesachim, the Nissuch Hayayin, that's connected to the carbon tamid, and then there's another Nissuch Hamayim that is not connected to the carbon tamid. Like the Chazanish says, it's a long shtick, but Toich Advarim, he says, this that Lamaisa, everybody's going to agree, the time to bring the Nissuch Hamayim, we actually brought it together, was with the carbon tamid. Don't mistake that, even though it's nothing to do with the tamid, but like he says, it's element hoga. The minig was to bring it with the carbon tamid, but it's not me'ikir adin. So what we have over here so far with a chlorkite, Nissuch Hamayim is not like Nissuch Hayayin. Nissuch Hamayim is a din. Just like you brought a carbon tamid, and you brought a carbon musaf, and karbonis, chatas lashem, yesterday Yom Kippur, you brought karbonis. So there was another, call it a carbon, there was Nissuch Hamayim, that was its own entity. And Memela with this, Ramei Simcha says, I understand why it says v'niskehem loshen rabim, because these two types of nesachims, if it would be both the same a chelik or the carbon, so do you have to list out that the nesachim, one chelik is wine, one is water, it's all part of the carbon. So it's two separate entities, these Nissuch Hamayim and Nissuch Hayayin. So even if we stop the Shiur right here, and Sukkos, you want to talk about Nissuch Hamayim, it's already a clearer thing to speak about, that Nissuch Hamayim is not just a part of the carbon tamid. The Nissuch Hamayim is its own entity, a mitzvah bifnei atzmoi, to bring every day of Chalamoid. What are the nafkaminas?
Would it possible to tamid if you didn't bring it?
We'll get to that. Reb Zevi, very good. We'll get to that shortly. If you don't have a carbon tamid, that's a klora nafkamina. That's nafkamina number 4 that we'll get soon. The Archamer brings. But if Reb Zevi brought it, we'll start with that. Taka, very klor. What happens if you don't have a carbon tamid? Rabbi said, if you don't have a carbon tamid, could you bring the nesachim? Nissuch Hayayin you cannot bring. The reason why you can't bring Nissuch Hayayin, because Nissuch Hayayin is only with the carbon tamid. If you don't have the carbon tamid, you can't bring the mincha, and you can't bring the yayin. Mashenke Nissuch Hamayim, you don't have a tamid, but water, you got water. Avada, water, you'll be able to bring. Klor nafkamina, one of the nafkaminas, clearly. If it's a din b'fnei atzmai, not part of the carbon. If you don't have a carbon tamid, you could still do the mitzvah minat Torah of Nissuch Hamayim. Another 3 nafkaminas, Ramei Simcha says they all bring these nafkaminas. It's all the same yesoid, but it plays out in 3 places. Could you bring the mayim or the yayin before the night before, let's say? The night before. Could you do Nissuch Hamayim or Nissuch Hayayin the night before? Or could you do it in the morning before you bring the carbon tamid? What happens if you brought the carbon tamid and you didn't have a chance yet to bring the Nissuch Hamayim v'Hayayin, and it was so busy, it was a busy day, and Lamaisa, the day passed, it's the next day. If it's a cheluk of the carbon tamid, the wine is a chelik of the carbon tamid. Mimela, you cannot bring it before, not the night before, and even the morning before, you can't bring it before the carbon tamid. It's a chelik of the carbon, you can't bring it before. Masha Einkein afterwards, Nissuch Hayayin, the wine. You didn't bring wine for the carbon tamid of Sunday morning today, Sunday, the week of Shiur Shechalvei of Sukkos, and you didn't bring Nissuch Hayayin, you didn't pour wine. You could still bring it afila ad asar yomim, because it's still connected to the carbon tamid. Masha Einkein, Nissuch Hamayim. Nissuch Hamayim you could bring the night before, because there's nothing to do with the tamid. Like the Hazmanim says, the minig was to bring it with the tamid. Even like Rabbi said, even if you don't have a tamid, you could bring it the night before, and you could also bring it in the morning before the carbon tamid. There's nothing to do with the tamid. It's a mitzvah b'fnei atzmo on Sukkos of Nissuch Hamayim. Afterwards, you could bring it the whole day, Nissuch Hamayim, but only up until the end of the day. Once you miss it, avros mani, batal karbonai. So here are three nafkaminas between Nissuch Hamayim and Nissuch Hayayin. Nissuch Hayayin is a chelik of the carbon tamid that's brought every single day of the year. Nissuch Hamayim is only brought on Sukkos. It's not connected to the tamid. It's its own mitzvah. You rather brought it at the time of the tamid. My de pshitale to Ramei Simcha. The Ramei Simcha says that Nissuch Hamayim is its own mitzvah, not connected b'chalal to the carbon tamid, like Nissuch Hayayin is. Zok the binyan siyan, it's a machlokes rishonim. It's a machlokes rishonim. You have the copy over there. It's a machlokes rishonim. The Ritva. The Ritva sagt the Ritva Haloi Tikshi de Nissuch Hamayim Einoi Chashav Mafurish in the Rishonim Einoi Ba Einoi Chashav Ba Im HaZevach. It's like what we saw in Ramei Simcha. Einoi Chashav, it's not connected. Shechivas Hayoimu, the din of Nissuch Hamayim has to do with the day, and it doesn't have to do with the carbon. V'lo choivas hazevach klal, Dr. Ritva. Sha'azevach shal tamid b'nesachim shal yayin. Yes, that's connected. Ma'ashenke Nissuch Hamayim is not connected to the carbon. The same is also the Rambam. The Ritva is mefurish. The Ritva spells it out crystal clear that it's not connected to the carbon. The Rambam doesn't say it as clear. But the Rambam al Kapanim, what the Rambam says is, the Rambam says, V'mhiktem Nissuch Hamayim lezevach. If you bring the Nissuch Hamayim before the zevach, not only if you bring it in the morning before, but even if you bring it the night before, you yotza. So that's al korchach, that it's not connected to the carbon tamid. If it's connected to the carbon tamid, it's a din in the tamid. You have to bring the tamid, and with the tamid you bring nesachim. Just like Nissuch Hayayin, you can't bring Nissuch Hamayim before the tamid. This also not. So my the pshita later Ramei Simcha, the Ritva and the Rambam is like that. Me'idoch, what the Ritva is going on a Ravid, and the Ravid argues, the Ravid holds that Nissuch Hamayim is like Nissuch Hayayin. It's connected to the carbon. Chlekes Rishonim. So what we had before, that Nissuch Hamayim is its own din. Now we have it's a machlokes Rishonim. The way how you're asking good, I'm not 100% sure. I learned it a few times. The Ritva is arguing on that Ravid, and is it mefurish that the reason why Laila is no good is because it's before, or maybe Stam it's a psul Laila?
Which carbon is it?
But at least the binyan siyan understands like that. At least the binyan siyan. He's going on the Nesachim.
Nissuch Hamayim it also has a special carbon, or it's part of the carbon?
No, it doesn't. Nissuch Hamayim, Lekam the Palak, doesn't have its own carbon. It's l'tchatchila brought at the time of the carbon tamid in the morning that had Nissuch Hayayin. The shaila is just does the Talmud of Chalamoid Sukkos, besides Nissuch Hayayin, also have Nissuch Hamayim? But you're right, it's not, there's never a tzad, there's no other carbonis. The water, the only addition of Nissuch Hamayim is only the water, no carbonis. Now the shaila is, do we plug in this Nissuch Hamayim into the carbon Talmud in the morning, bedoime to the wine that's connected? Is it not another ingredient into the carbon Talmud, or it's its own din? And if it's its own din, you can bring it already by night. The Ravid says that if you bring it by night, lo yatsa. So, and the Ritva argues. So the Binyan Sin understands. You know why by night it's not good? The reason why by night it's not good is because you have to bring it with the Talmud.
Is everything Talmud? Because Talmud Shach is the first carbon, and Talmud Bein is the last carbon. So it has to be sandwiched between these two carbones. That has anything to do with the Talmud itself.
So I'm talking not sure. That's what Reb Zevi asked also. It needs more clarity, at least to me, in the Ritva when he brings the Ravid. When it says Lila's no good, maybe Stamaza you can't bring it by Lila, and if you can't bring it by Lila, that has nothing to do
with in the morning either before the
Right. The way the Ritva argues on the Ravid, he doesn't. The Ravid says you can't bring a Nesachim by night. So if it's just an algemeine din, so what is the Ritva saying? It's a din by itself. Okay, but still you can't bring it by night. It seems the reason why you can't bring it by night is because it's connected to the Talmud. Zok the Ritva, I argue it's not connected to the Talmud, and therefore you can bring it by night. But that's how the Binyan Sin understands that there's a machloikis rishonim. Machloikis rishonim and the Nissuch Hamayim, is the Nissuch Hamayim connected, or the Nissuch Hamayim is his own din? But Rabbi said, we're not done yet. Atkan, we add Pshita Leiler Amei Simcha. The Nissuch Hamayim is its own entity. Then we saw the Binyan Tzion says it's a Machlokes Rishonim. Then the Binyan Tzion in his Pirish Aruch Laner goes on to say that it's called a Machlokes Tanoim. Machlokes Tanoim. What's the machlokes? Where is the machlokes Tanan? Where is the machlokes? You have this copy over here. Also, on the bottom, shtickle vade ba'oisem moel hinis tapakti. He brings the same suffix with the nafkaminas. He brings the nafkamina that we mentioned before. What happens if you don't have a carbon Talmud? But al koponim, in this shaili says it's a machlokes tanoim. What's the machlokes? He says like this: if you learn that the Nissuch Hamayim is known from the Loshen Rabim V'niskehen, then it is connected. Nissuch Hamayim is like Nissuch Hayayin, it's connected to the Talmud. The exact opposite of the Meshech Chochmah. The Meshech Chochmah says that if it would be the same type, if Nissuch Hamayim and Nissuch Hayayin would be the same, you wouldn't be able to say V'niskehen, Loshen Rabim. Zokter the Aruch Laner, if you learn Nissuch Hamayim, you look at the Gemara over there in Tainus, Daf Beis, Daf Gimel, if you learn Nissuch Hamayim from V'niskeyem, Loshen Rabim, Oy Bazoy, then these two, so then he says that it's the same. It's the same. Masha Enkein, if it's Aloch LaMoshe Misinai, or if you learn it with the drasha like we saw Mayim, the Mem Yud Mem, not connected to V'niskeyem, just the extra oisius. If you learn it from there, then you could say it's a separate din. So again, there's one more piece to add on over here, but just to make it clear, there should be a very clear takeaway. Nissuch Hamayim could either be like Nissuch Hayayin, Dahainu, it's one mitzvah part of the Talmud. Of course, there's a chiddush of a mitzvah on Sukkos, lekam on the palak, but it's another ingredient included into the carbon Talmud. Or you could say that actually it's separate. It happens to be we bring it at the time of carbon Talmud, but it has nothing to do with the carbon Talmud. I made a copy. You could look at it in the Briskarovan stencil, Claire's. Even if you say that Nissuch Hamayim is in carbon, you could still clear two tzadim. I'm going to leave it for now. But I want to add one more nekud over here, and that's also in the copies, the Avnei Nezer. The Avnei Nezer comes, let's call it with a twist, that both are true. Both are true. Side, it's sad to say that Nissuch Hamayim is bedoimet to Nissuch Hayayin and it's part of the carbon tamid. And side to say that the Nissuch Hamayim has its own din. And it depends. It depends. If you bring the yayin together with the carbon tamid, then it's a chelik of the carbon tamid. Masha'ekin, if you bring it separately, then it's not a chelik. Both are true, but it depends. If you bring it, it's a chiddush. If you bring it together with the carbon tamid, then it becomes a chelik of the carbon tamid. If you don't bring it with the carbon tamid, then it's not. The nafkaminas that we said before are still going to apply, that Nissuch Hamayim has its own din. Because Avad, if you bring it the night before, you could bring it the night before, and it's not going to be part of the Talmud. So you could bring it the night before. You could bring it the morning before. But what's going to come out hafel of a fella is that when you bring the Talmud in the morning and you didn't do the Nissuch Hamayim, you're not going to be able to bring it the next day. Because remember we said before, another nafkamina, besides before, could you bring it 3 days later? So we said if it's its own din, I said it wrong. You are going to be able to bring it. You are going to be able to bring it later. You're not, no. Back to what I said, well, you're not going to be able to bring it. You're not going to be able to bring it afterwards because it's not connected to the Talmud. It's not connected. You can't bring it 2 days later. You're not going to be able to bring it. So Nachum, so with a klorkite, Zok the Avnei Nezer with a klorkite, that both are true. Sai, it's connected when you bring it with the carbon tamid, and if you don't bring it with the carbon tamid, it's not connected. So just Avrami, is it klor? You had a shaila before. Is it still? You still have that shaila, or what was your shaila before again?
Gemara's mashma is one thing.
The drasha of Mayim or the other drasha? Which drasha?
The Mayim one.
So the emes is now that you're saying really that the Scheiner says that if you learn from the drasha of Mayim, it's actually not one thing. If you learn it from the other mandam in the Gemara, v'niskehem loshin rabim, so it's one thing. Not like the Meshech Chachma. The Meshech Chachma says it's still two things. But the Scheiner says that if it's v'niskehem, it's the same thing. Nissuch Hayayin, Nissuch Hamayim is the same thing. Masha'ekin, if you learn it from Mayim, so the Torah says v'niska Nissuch Hamayim.
What, just like Remes Ba'alma?
The Gemara says it's a remes, but remes l'nissuch Hamayim min Torah. It's a din midaraisa, but it's merumas. How is it merumas? From the extra letters. But the extra letters, by the way, are not even dafka from the word nisachim, right? There's an extra rem k'mishpatam, and the mem not in the v'niska, v'niskehem, or v'insacheha. So maybe let's talk not. It's not connected to the Nissuch Hayayin. So just to conclude and to sum up, the mitzvah of Nissuch Hamayim, that's midoiraisa, halacha l'maisha mesina, it's not one of the Tariag mitzvahs, is brought every day, brought Sukkos, the din Nissuch Hamayim, it's brought, the preferable time is it's brought with the carbon tamid. And there's a shaila, maybe a machlokes rishonim, maybe even a machlokes tanoim. Is it the same thing as Nissuch Hayayin, or is it a separate din? The Bein Tzion, when he speaks about this, he has a long tshuva. You'll see it's in the copies. The Bein Tzion starts off and he says, just like we say karbonis u'neshalma parim svaseinu, that ki'ilu hikriv. It's interesting, these are shaila if you say it elsewhere besides carbonis, but this is zicha bedoima to a carbon. So the Bein Tzion says he wants to go in and get involved in the mitzvah of Nissuch Hayayin, Nissuch Hamayim, to have an neshalma parim svaseinu, to be makayim, ki'ilu Nissuch Hamayim. So if we're not zoicha and we're going to be chalamoid still in Golis, so then we went through a shtickle the Inyan. We could speak about it chalamoid. We could have an neshama parim svaseinu. But avada the brach is we should be zoicha to the Beis Hamikdash Ashlishi that will be able to actually be Makayim, have the mitzvah midaraisa of Nissuch Hamayim together with all the other mitzvahs in the Beis Hamikdash Ashlishi b'Meher Yameinu.
That's like we want the